passionate instigator and dynamic problem solver, Dr. Kevin Ross Emery, the host of the Dr. Kevin Radio Show, will be taking you outside the box, behind the curtain, and identifying the load of BS we are fed every day. And now, Dr. Kevin.
Hello, 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 and welcome to the Dr. Kevin Show. We are here on the last thoughtful Thursday of 2020. And as always, with a thoughtful Thursday, we have Lori Powers-Otto, as we are looking for things to help you be thoughtful, people that are doing thoughtful things in the world, and we try to give you things to think about. But mostly it's about gratitude and thoughtful and things like this. So, but this is the last one in 2020, and 2020 has been a year that's blown a lot of people's thought processes right out of the water. And so Lori and I are going to talk about a little bit about that this evening. But remember, this is a live call-in show. You can call in at 202-570-7057. That's 202-570-7057. Call in, share an everyday hero story, something that you or somebody else did that touched or changed somebody's life. I think this is a time when we all need to be a little inspired, a little motivated, and we all need to be grateful. So, without further ado, Miss Lori, how are you?
I am wonderful, Dr. Kevin. How are you?
Well, you know, I'm just kind of treading along, looking at all the things that are rapidly changing around me, and kind of, you know, keeping both feet on the surfboard with a very wide V pattern in between, kind of going a little to the left, a little to the right, a little forward, a little back.
I get that.
So we have been talking. We have been talking offline, off the radio show a little bit, about how we were feeling about this format. We've been doing it for a while. We've brought a lot of good stories to people. I have gotten emails from people, or have had people reach out to me in one of my social medias and say how inspiring or motivating this show has been for them. So I know we're out there touching people. We don't seem to be able to get them to call in, though, and share anything. And so it sometimes feels like talking to dead air. You know what I mean?
Oh, I do. It can be a little disappointing, shall we say, to not know if you're actually reaching people. So I would love if people would let us know. Flood your social medias. Call in. Let us know that you're hearing us, that what we're doing is making a difference.
Well, you know, one of the things is we do the live show 6 to 7 every Thursday night, but it plays 6 more times between now and our next show. Like our last show played 6 times between this and the last show and this show. And so people may not be listening to it at a time when they can call in. You have to be listening. You can only call in at this time.
Right.
And so, you know, when I get these people giving me feedback or saying that they're listening to the show or they really like it or something really touched them, if I say, why didn't you call in? Well, they were listening to it on Sunday afternoon, or they were, you know, like, okay.
All right.
So, and, you know, it's, some people just really, they just want the experience of inspiring, motivating voices. And sometimes, especially with this last year and everything that's been going on, I really feel that sometimes people are just too tired.
I get that. I really do.
It's easy for these times to be exhausting. And I'm sure you have some stories ready to share because you're always Josephia on the spot. Or John. John. Instead of John. I didn't prepare any stories this week. Huh?
No,
because, huh? What?
I'm just laughing at you.
Oh.
That's okay. Keep going.
Because Thoughtful Thursday is also about getting people to think, engaging people in conversations. And we share some wonderful stories from the internet. But if people are really looking, they can go out and find those stories themselves. And it's nice when we can present them on a platter. But I was going to add a couple of other little twists to the show.
Okay.
So one, I wanted us to talk about what was our biggest takeaway for 2020. We both have been spiritual teachers for decades. We both live our lives as best as we can being spiritual people, still in human form, with human crapola splattering on us and, dealing with blizzards and electricity outs and crazy people in politics and the COVID. None of being spiritual stops any of those experiences from happening. It's just how you choose to experience them and what you choose to do with them. And I think that people are not only exhausted, but I think that they're a little lost. They're tired, they're lost, and a story of some 8-year-old who raised tens of thousands of dollars to help feed people at a Native American reservation. It can inspire, it might even motivate, but I think that some of our listeners just need some good spiritual advice every now and then, or just need to hear, how are we doing with these things? Or what are we doing? Or what do we want to point out? So I was thinking we might make this show nothing like not having this conversation before we're on air, right, Lori?
Right.
Right. Because I know you are quick on your feet.
It's all good, my friend.
I just want to keep life interesting for you,
Yeah.
So you will still have your opportunity to share whatever stories you would like. But I'd like to ask that question of you to start. What's your takeaway from 2020? And what do you want to bring into 2021?
I think my biggest takeaway from 2020 this year has been the rethinking of priorities. What's important, what's not important. The reconnecting with family and friends on a real level, not just the superficial passing during the day kind of thing. Even families who, by all accounts were happy families, but they really weren't invested in each other, right? They may or may not have dinner together, the parents kiss the kids goodnight, whatever, but now they're taking the time to actually engage and talk and share and experience. Priorities have shifted majorly. And it is a choice how you react to this. And I know a lot of people don't want to hear that. But I was speaking to a woman just today, and she and her husband both make a great deal of money. But she is still stressed and miserable. Now, I have a very blessed life, don't misunderstand, but I do not make a lot of money. I make virtually no money, actually. And that's okay. I have a very rich and blessed life. So speaking to this woman who outwardly has everything, a beautiful home, a wonderful career, a loving husband, an amazing child, and realizing that she is not happy made me go, huh. So my biggest takeaway from this year is I've reevaluated my priorities, what's important. My relationships are the most important thing. Making sure my needs are covered, of course, very important. But I don't need a trip to Disney. I don't need a new car every 2 years. Not that I ever did that, but I mean, my husband's truck's 17 years old. But I know people who do. I don't need any of those things. I need my family happy and healthy. I need myself happy and healthy. And this year allowed me, you, and everybody the opportunity to find out what we wanted, what we needed. You know, I've taken this time to, of course, do house projects because that's what we always do. But I've started writing yet another new book. So I'm currently writing 2 new books. You know, so that's my big takeaway from this year. Life is what you make of it. And maybe you need to reevaluate your priorities if you're not happy with where you are right now. That's it.
Well, you bring up a very good point. And I want to talk about that point before I share what one of my big takeaways was. And I think that one of the things is when the brakes got put on and lives came to a sudden stop, and suddenly, whether we weren't able to keep up the madness because the madness just wasn't available, whatever happened, a lot of people stopped and got to ask the question once they kind of recovered from the whiplash of stopping,
right?
Which, when you're really busy, if you stop too quick, it's whiplash. You know,
yes.
Woof, woof. That they got to take the time to ask themselves the questions like, what am I doing? Am I happy? What am I doing this for? What is my priority? What is important? They came out of that. They came off the gerbil wheel without even realizing they'd been on one. And
right.
I think that is so important that people have actually been forced to breathe instead
Amen.
of this, to really breathe instead of this short, shallow, almost hyperventilating breath at the pace we were all keeping.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And so to me, one of the gifts of 2020 was the reevaluation time. And this is what I hear from a lot of people I talk to, reevaluating, am I the person I want to be? Am I doing what I want to do? Is my relationship where I want it? And, you know, as I've said many times on the show, I've been crazy busy since this whole thing busted because people are desperately in need of guidance in that reevaluation process because they're so stuck in limited thought processes or whatever that they don't know that there are choices they make that are choices. They don't even know that they're choices. They don't know that they're choices. And that's always an interesting question. If you don't know you have a choice, do you have a choice? What do you think, Lori?
Well, I think that's a double-edged question because logically, if you don't know you have a choice, you don't know. But deep down, we always know. We always get that nagging feeling that something's off or something's not the way we want it to be, that there's another option. We always know that on some level. So then, yes, they do have a choice. So you understand what I mean by this, a two-edged question?
Well, it is. I think, however, what at least what I do, and I kind of assume you do, but you can tell me I'm full of hot air because I'm out walking in a cold night, so hot air is comforting. Is that when you point out to somebody that they can choose differently and they have an aha moment and realize they can make a different choice, it's different than the person who understands the choice they're making and maybe they feel they're trapped with that choice or they're afraid to make a different choice. I think we're dealing with two different animals, so to speak.
Yes, I agree. There are a lot of people that are afraid to make a different choice. And that's an important thing to remember. You know, a lot of people give well-meaning advice, right? Like, you should leave that guy. He's not good for you. Okay, but you're not really giving them any advice. You're basically just giving them an opinion, you know, right? So this relationship you're in is not healthy for you. Why don't you come stay with me for a while? Would be much more helpful, usually, not always. But you know what I mean? So then you give them, then they've got a choice because you gave them a concrete choice, not just a maybe possibility pie in the sky. Who knows if what? Does that make sense?
Yeah. And, you know, sometimes when people are afraid to make change, and for those people that just say, you know, the guy's a jerk, you just need to leave him, I wish you'd stop talking to Jeff. He's not leaving me. Oh, anyway, so go ahead.
Says that to Jeff, I'm going to punch them in the face because you two are amazing.
We'll be right back on Thoughtful Thursday with Rev Lori Powers-Otto and yours truly, Dr. Kevin, here on the Dr. Kevin Show.
Conscious media for conscious minds. OMTimes. Have you ever wondered how to change your love paradigm? The secret key is finding a love partnership, not just a regular connection. How do you find these? Through conscious relationships. Ascending Hearts Dating is a dating site for people like you that believes in second chances and a different type of spiritual connection. Try Ascending Hearts for free today at ascendinghearts.com and change your love paradigm. Ascending Hearts, the premier dating community for the spiritually awake.
Hello, I'm Sandy Sedgbeer, host of OMTimes magazine's flagship radio show, What is Going On? My passion is sifting through information, research, and innovations from new thought teachers, speakers, and researchers pushing back the boundaries of what we know about life, energy, metaphysics, and the universe. I love shifting perceptions about who we are, why we're here, and how quickly impossible becomes normal when we open our minds, expand our awareness, and accept that the only limits that exist are those we place upon ourselves. So if you're the kind of forward-thinking, eager investigator of what lies beyond the current reality that most perceive, why not make a date to come play with me in the field of possibilities at 4 p.m. Pacific Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time every Thursday, and together we can discover what's really going on.
These are the sounds of a dinner that almost didn't happen. A dinner now served, thanks to people like you. Due to COVID-19, 17 million more Americans may face hunger. Feeding America is helping our neighbors in need. And if you're able, you can too. Donations are being accepted at feedingamerica.org/coronavirus. Brought to you by the Ad Council and Feeding America, 200 food banks strong.
Consider staying with me or not.
I'll take care of it.
Hello. And welcome back to the Dr. Kevin Show. And this is Thoughtful Thursday. And on this Thoughtful Thursday, we're just going to help you be thoughtful. There are lots of good things going on in the universe, and you can find them. And there are more email lists you can sign up for and websites you can go to that are sharing the good news around. Is it the right percentage? Hell no. We still get a whole lot more bad news than good news. But we were just talking about choices. And you can choose to search out those good news and those stories that we've been sharing with you for a year now. And I'm not saying we're not going to continue to share them, But I think that sharing the wisdom of two, well, 1.5 gifted spiritual teachers. I'm the half. Lori's the full. That to help you be more thoughtful about your choices and things like that, is also falls under Thoughtful Thursday. And I have something else up my sleeve, but it's not quite time yet. But I'll pull it out before the show's over. Ooh. Stay tuned. There's a mystery in the air. It's a mystery how I've still been in the air for over a dozen years. So that's the mystery. No. So what were we talking about before we went to break? Who knows? Were you keeping track?
No.
Oh, I hate it when that happens. But anyways, so we were talking about those choices, and sometimes maybe we can't say, maybe you should leave that guy, or do you want to, if you want, you can come and hang out here. But sometimes all you need to do is just be a sounding board and say, it sounds like you're struggling, and if you'd like, you're my friend or you're my sibling, I care about you, I love you, but I can choose to be impartial. If you would like me to play that role, I can choose to be sympathetic and support you in your struggle, through just supporting you to give you an ear to listen to. I can separate myself. Now, don't say it if you can't do it, but I can be a sounding board. I can say, well, I get that. That would upset me too. But, on the other hand, maybe look at this perspective, or what about that? I'm not asking people to go out and just be ad hoc counselors, but I think that if you have deep, meaningful friendships, those are the people that can sometimes ask you the best questions or point out things that they've observed. And if you know they're coming from a place of love, it just makes you think. I'm not going to tell you should leave the guy. I'm going to talk to you about what part of you looks like you do, and then what part of you wants to stay, and where's the in-between part, and where's that struggle, and be a sounding board. Sometimes that's the best thing we can do. Absolutely. I don't know. What do you think?
No, I agree 1,000,000%. Because instead of giving advice, give a listening ear, but actually listen. Because oftentimes people just need to talk things out, and they need someone to listen. They don't need you to say, no, you should do this. No, do this. I thought I would do this if it was me. But it's not you. So as well-intentioned as all of us are when we, give advice, we need to stop giving advice, and we need to start listening and being there and supporting those that we love.
You can tell people what you think when they say, so what do you think?
Exactly.
But oftentimes, it's not uncommon that people in struggle are talking to people who are in their own struggle. And what they say to you about your struggle is what they need to hear about their struggle. And maybe it's the same thing, but maybe it's not.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it might be similar, close, but everybody's situation is going to be a little different.
Yeah. So I think it's important. And one of the places that I consistently find there is a lack of communication around is the rules of engagement in your communications. Be willing to say what you're looking for, and be willing to honor the other person's boundaries when you're having a communication. I used to always say to my friends years ago, before I even had a practice as a spiritual coach, counselor, and catalyst, just as a friend, I would say, don't ask me questions that you don't want to know what I really think, because I will tell you. Yeah. And I had some friends that would stop and go, don't think, yep, nope. I think I'm going to pass. And I'm like, that's probably a good choice because you may not want to know what I have to think, but if you do, I'll tell you, but I'm not going to tell you what you want to hear. Now, if you say to me, and this is what I mean about rules of engagement. If you say to me, I just really need you to listen and I need to feel like somebody loves me or supports me, I can do that. That's what you requested. I can agree to that. I can do that. If you say, I really need to talk this out and I need to puzzle out what's going on, I can do that. If you want to know what I think, I will tell you. That doesn't mean doesn't mean I'm right, doesn't mean you should listen to me. But I always remember this one friend that was very much, she would have a hard time. And she would shy away sometimes. I would say, well, don't ask me what I think unless you really want to know. And one day she said, okay, I really want to know. And I told her, and she goes, that's great. But, that's what I was feeling, what I thought, and she was like all excited. And she goes, why did you ask me if I really wanted to know? And I said, when I say, do you really want to know? It doesn't mean it's bad. It just means, do you want the truth?
Right.
But that's what I mean by rules of engagement. If you have meaningful relationships with people, you should set the rules of engagement. If you come to me with a problem, are you looking for me to help you fix it? Do you just need to vent about it? Do you, what role do you want me to play in that communication? And that role can change. And I think if people did that more, they would have more successful communications.
I agree because it's not even just with your friends, but like I belong to a lot of holistic groups, and someone will say, oh, I don't know, send healing to my dog, he's not feeling well. And inevitably, 100 people will pass on, well, you should go to the vet, or you should do this, or you should do that. They didn't ask you your opinion. You don't know that what they have or have not done. Stop bombarding these people. They're asking for you to send healing or love or prayers. Just do that. That's what they asked you to do. You don't need to embellish. You certainly don't need to go on for 12 paragraphs on how whatever they're doing is wrong when you don't even know what they're doing. So if we're doing that to complete strangers, how are we doing it to the people that we're closest to? Are we not giving them? Are we not listening to what they're asking for? Are we just assuming? Are we just going off because we think we know what's best? Because we don't even know the story yet. We haven't listened. You have to listen and find out what it is they're asking from you.
Yep.
And that doesn't mean that you can't ever express yourself. It's you wait till you're asked, or when they're done spilling, their story or venting or whatever. You say, "Would you like to know what I think?" And they may say no, and then you say, "Okay, well, if you do, we'll talk about it another time."
See, I've gotten to the point where I don't even ask the "Do you want to know what I think?" question 99% of the time, because it feels too much like work to me. If you want to know what I think, ask me. If you don't, oh, thank God I get a break.
Well, you do have a lot of people contacting you daily for you to fix their world when they can do it themselves.
The other key here that I think people miss, and you said that, one of the important things was the prioritizing of relationships in 2020 and things like this. And I think the other thing is when somebody asks you what you think, if they do want your guidance or your advice, if they do want your insight, you must do it without expectations. It does not mean that they didn't hear you if they choose not to do it. It doesn't mean they do not respect you. It does not mean that at some point down the road that they may do it. But when people decide to weigh in, especially if they do it in a pushy way, and then are like, well, you didn't, obviously you didn't understand the great advice I gave you because you're not following it. What kind of loser are you? Not helpful.
No.
No.
Not at all.
And you watch this. I see it. You see it, right?
Yeah. Oh, I've seen it.
Yeah. I've experienced it. You asked me what I thought. I said, yep, and I heard you. Well, what? Well, are you going to do that? I don't know. I'm asking a few people what they thought. I'll put it all together. Then I'll think what I think and see what I think. And then I'm going to move forward and I'll do it. I thank you for your opinion because that's what I wanted. I wanted your opinion. I did not want you to make my decision.
Correct.
I wasn't giving my power to you to make my decision. Yep, go ahead.
No, what you're saying is exactly dead on. You asked for their opinion, not for them to fix it.
Yep.
You didn't give up your power. I love that. That's exactly right.
Don't try to fix it. Don't try to solve it. And don't try to make a decision for me. That's how codependent relationships get started. That's why one of the things when people start working on the process with me, I say, I don't do codependence. Of course, what I actually say is, don't put me on an altar, because every time somebody has put me on an altar, somebody lights incense and my ass gets burned. That's what I actually say to my clients, but I do. I'm like,
no, but it's so true. That's the funny part. It's so true.
Yeah.
If you're a paying client, I'm still not going to tell you what to do. I will give you tools. I will give you options. I will give you direction, but I will never make your decision for you.
It's really about checking your baggage at the door when you want to be somebody's friend. If you need somebody to be your friend, your baggage should be front and center. Here's my baggage and if you want help sorting it out, come help me sort it out. If you want to get it repacked, great. If you want to drop it off at Goodwill, even better. But understand the role you're playing. And of course, there's always oh yeah, tell me what's going on. Oh, that's too bad. Let me tell you what's going on with me. Blah, 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 blah. I'm so glad we had this conversation, says the first person. Yeah. So 2020 in a way that is got a kind of clarity that I have never experienced before in my life, did I realize the amount of chaos and the price that one has to pay as a society, as a race, as a nation, whatever you want to look at it, the price we need to pay if we really want to wake the apathetic. Because I have been saying for years, it is not going to be the right-wing fanatics or the left-wing fanatics that brings the end to this culture or this species or whatever. It's going to be the apathetic.
Yes.
And we finally got enough vitriol. We got enough apathetic people not paying attention. We got enough people from both sides in different cases stirring the pot enough that we've had the largest election turnout percentage-wise, I think, since the Civil War. They may have even beat that.
Yeah.
That is, but the price we pay for waking the apathetic. When we finally kick them hard enough and they go, but then they've been out of the loop so long, they just grab onto whatever is familiar and oftentimes speaks to their wounds, and they go charging forward without really thinking it through. And I think that's some of what's happened in 2020.
I agree.
So
excuse me.
that is one of my takeaways for 2020. The price you pay for waking the apathetic. And it's chaos and it's violence And it's seeing both some of the great good man is capable of and the great evil. Because at this point, there are just some things going on which truly question any moral integrity, any sense of goodness at all. It's all about power and greed, and whoever gets thrown under the bus is irrelevant as long as they get to drive the bus. And it's a sad statement. Will it disillusion me? No. Will it slow me down or stop me? No. Will it irritate me enough that I might kick the shit out of the bus and just drop kick it over, I don't know, a football field in China? I might try that. That or Russia. Yeah, I think that's a better goalpost. But anyways, but we can use it to motivate. We can use it to move forward. And so with that, I'm going to see if you perhaps would like to hear a poem I wrote this morning.
Absolutely.
I'm actually writing this for a Yule celebration we're doing. And I'm going to share that piece of poetry when we get back after this break on the Dr. Kevin Show.
The Real Conscious Connection. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM. The number one reason girls drop out of school in sub-Saharan Africa is lack of access to feminine hygiene products. The Pads for Schoolgirls Project, an outreach of Humanity Healing International, is changing this paradigm by setting up sewing programs at schools, teaching girls a vocational skill, while producing the reusable pads that help keep them attending classes. The girls pay it forward by making and giving pad kits to other girls in need. To learn more, visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
Vox Novus, the new voice. Vox Novus, the new dimension. Vox Novus, thought and movement leaders who will share from their experience and offer tools to help us navigate our rapidly changing world. My name is Victor Furman. Join me every Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio for Vox Novus, the new voice.
911, what is your emergency?
My kid shot himself.
All right, where's the wound, sir?
911, what's your emergency?
Please help. My son shot his brother. 911, what is your emergency? Okay.
911, please state your emergency.
Every day, 8 kids and teens are unintentionally killed or injured by loaded and unlocked guns.
It wasn't locked.
Learn how to make your home safer at endfamilyfire.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council and End Family Fire.
Hello, and welcome back to the Dr. Kevin Show here on OMTimes, where we're changing the world. Wait for it. One Om at a time. And here on the Dr. Kevin Show, the second Thursday of every month, we do Thoughtful Thursday, where we share people that are doing thoughtful things in the world, where we share good news, where we share things to make you thoughtful, where we encourage you to share things, ask us questions, things to make us thoughtful, or share your everyday heroes that are out there doing great things and bring some good news into the world and to honoring them. You can do that by calling 202-570-7057. That's 202-570-7057. Now, if you have a story that you'd like to share on Thoughtful Thursday, or a question you'd like to ask Lori or I, you can always email it and we'll read it on the air. You can say, don't mention my name, and we won't mention your name. That's fine. And you can email that to Dr. Kevin, DrKevin, at MyDrKevin, MyDrKevin.com. Again, that's Dr. Kevin, DrKevin, at MyDrKevin, MyDrKevin.com. So if you have a question you'd like to hear Lori and I discuss, if you would like to share a story, something that you think is good for Thoughtful Thursday, you may send it to that email address and we'll bring it on the air. If you want us to share who you are, we can do that, or we don't need to. One of the things I've been putting out is these little mini videos called Dr. Kevin Discusses. And I have invited people on my mailing list and through my social media and my personal contacts to send me questions of things that I'm going to answer in 3 to 5 minutes in a video called Dr. Kevin Discusses, which will then show up on my YouTube channel. My YouTube channel is MyDrKevin, MyDrKevin. I'm offering this now to the radio listeners that Lori and I will do the same thing. We'll answer those questions or share those stories. Now, I'm throwing this out without consulting Lori. So now, in perfectly backward order, Lori, is this okay with you? I just figured I'd wait and ask you on the air.
I think it's great. I love it. I would love for people to email us anything they'd like us to answer, anything they'd like us to discuss, any stories they want to share. Absolutely. That's what this show's about. It's not about Lori, and it's about the world. So let's all, I love this idea.
Now, the other thing I want to do is, there was a time period where the Dr. Kevin show, 2 or 3 iterations ago, it was before I was on OMTimes. I don't know if it was my last station or my station before. I think I'm getting old. Thank God old never looks so good, so it's okay. But I used to do a poetry show once a month where I would have people send in original pieces of poetry, or they could call them in and read them on air. But it was to support poetry and poets, because that's very near and dear to my heart. And I'm thinking about every now and then on some Thoughtful Thursdays, depending on what we have for stories, that if anybody has a poem they would like to send in and share with the world that they think will inspire or motivate or make people think, that I don't know if they can send in an audio clip and we can play it on air. I imagine there might be a way. At this point, I'm sure I'll hear from my producer saying, "What are you, crazy?" Or, "No, it's very easy. Just do it this way." But I have no idea. But you know what? Being clueless looks good on me. So I wear it often and well. But so I don't know if we can get you reading your poem like pre-taped, but certainly I can read it. And I've been working with not only my own poetry, but I've taught poetry. I've worked with developing poets. I have run many kinds of poetry circles, and I'm always happy to read somebody else's poem on air, obviously, and give them credit for it. As I say, the way a poem should be read. So I'm going to read it exactly how you have put it together. So if you have no commas, no dashes, no periods, that's how I'm going to read it, just so you know. But poetry has been written to be read. And I think it's time to bring a little poetry back to the Dr. Kevin show. So what do you think about that, Miss Lori?
I love that. I'm excited. I love poetry. I love your poetry, but I love the way you deliver poetry. So if someone is too shy to read it on air, having you bring it to life on air would be such a tremendous gift. I encourage anybody who has written poetry to call in, email it to you, somehow get it out there in the world via Thoughtful Thursday. Love it, love it, love it.
And of course, you may also, and I'm sure you know, but I'm just going to make sure I say it, can bring any kind of poetry on that you would like to share. Or if you would like to have me read a poem for you, I can do that, because sometimes it's nice to hear somebody else read your words. So you can just sit back and listen. So that offer is to you and anybody that you know. Maybe you have somebody that writes some beautiful poetry and you tell her what we're doing or him what we're doing. And they say, "Oh, I have this poem I really love." Say, "Well, send it in, or I'll bring it to Dr. Kevin." And then make sure you tune in so you can hear it being read.
Yeah.
So these are a few of the ideas. And I am putting out a weekly poetry corner again, and you can find that on my YouTube channel, MyDrKevin, where I share a single poem in a little vlog. I don't know if you've watched any of them or not, Miss Lori. I know you're a busy lady, so. Huh? Oh, good.
Yeah.
So, you know, and to remind our listeners, you know, I did put out 4 new books of poetry this year. I'm scheduled to put out four books of poetry, 2 books of poetry this year. I think I'm shooting for 4 next year, and I'm writing all the time. And I wrote this one this morning. Okay. Come listen and hear about the longest night of the year. The light so brief in the daytime sky, we wonder if the sun actually went by. For some, they huddle in darkness. It's in isolation they keep. Others spend their time praying for the light, cursing the darkness, moaning their plight. But for me, I search for the gifts which hide deep within the night. Gifts that when brought into the light make me hardier for the next long night, whenever it may alight. For the longest night of the year comes only once in a year. However, our longest nights will come and go, and havoc sow, for those nights may last a year or more. But the quicker gifts, the sooner the light, so invest in the search and fear not the night. Often the best gifts are unbound when darkness rules and there is no light to be found. So come listen and hear. Live life with love and in hope, and ye shall have nothing to fear.
Wow, wow. I love that. Absolutely love it. That's beautiful. So what was your inspiration?
Well, I'm going to admit to a little bit of ego here. Not that I really have to admit to it. We know I'm not shy. So, on one hand, my mother-in-law, husband, and I were doing a ceremony on Yule, and we're getting together in front of the fireplace, and we're going to close out and release 2020, and we're going to welcome in 2021 and do, Yule, more pagan type rituals. And she put together, we've done this is like our 3rd or 4th year we've done this. And my mother-in-law put together the curriculum this year, or curriculum, syllabus, whatever. And she thought that we should each read a poem, and because she knows about all that I write a lot of poetry, so she figured I had to have something that would fit. And she likes to write poetry, and so does Jeff. So it was like, so she thought, no big deal. Well, I thought, oh, you want a poem for Yule? Well, I just need to write one. Like, I'm just gonna, why go back to something I've already done? Let's do something new. Besides, every week I get a massage. It's one of my self-care things. And because I've been so inundated with creativity lately, I actually have jokingly said on a couple of times that I'm going to release a whole collection of poetry called Poetry from the Privy, because if I take a 5-minute bathroom break, a poem comes out. And so for the last several weeks, you like that? Poetry from the Privy. I really think that's a catchy title. But that ego part I'm talking about, not in a bad way, but every week I go to see my massage therapist because I've been writing so much lately. I don't know, a month, 5-6 weeks ago, there was a poem. She said something during the massage session. I said, oh, I just wrote a poem the other day about that. She goes, well, can I hear it at the end? And I said, like at the end, after the session. And I said, yeah. So I read her the poem, and her assistant was there, and they're both sitting there, and I read her the poem. And they were like, oh, that's really great. I'm like, well, thank you. I appreciate that. And Then she wanted a copy of it. And then she wanted to know if I'd done it at the Poetry Corner and could I send her a link. And I said, that's very flattering and thank you. And I appreciate that. But then the next week I went and she said, well, have you written anything new? So every time I see her now, if I've written anything new, she wants to hear it. Well, this last week was a little crazy and I hadn't written anything new for this poem for this week. So I was like, well, I really need to write a poem because she's going to say, have you written anything new this week? And can we hear it at the end of the session? And, you know, and I have this captive audience who, you know, sit there and, you know, politely tell me they like to hear my poetry. I know they actually do because they keep asking to and they don't have to. They could say, yeah, we're really busy now. Sorry. Can we hear that poem like next year? Maybe 2025. So, and the poems are also different. I mean, like I'm all over the place on my poetry. There is no single theme. So anyway, so the poem came because I wanted to do something for Yule. And then I got to my massage therapist today and I said, you know, I haven't really edited it yet. I don't feel like it's complete. So I wouldn't read her to it today. So now they're like, they're on tenterhooks that next week they want to hear this poem that I wrote that I had written this morning, but I wasn't quite ready to. I'm like, and I went and reworked it a couple of times, and so this is the first time I've actually shared it with anybody. You're the first person, Lori, to hear this poem. You and the listeners.
Well, I'm honored. I'm honored. Thank you.
But I think the other thing about this poem is it speaks of 2020. You know, we talk about the dark night of the soul. We talk about longest nights. And sometimes a long night can last a year. Sometimes you can really be in that dark night of the soul. You can really be where you're feeling like there's a lot of deep dives. And I think that, you know, I'm probably going to title this poem, I haven't decided yet, probably Yule 2020, which will say it all. But I think a lot of people need to hear, yeah, it's been dark, but there are gifts there, and there are good things you can get. And yes, the light does come back. And so with all of that in mind, I think that this 2020 was a perfect, I think this is a perfect poem, so to speak, for closing out 2020. So.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing it.
Yeah. And I hear this and I am going to trust that you, Miss Lori, will keep me in line if I need to be kept in line. But on Thoughtful Thursdays, even if we don't get anybody else's poem, if I declare that I've got enough pieces that I want to do a whole show that's a poetry show of mine and other people's. When I did the poetry show before, I would have different poets that would co-host it with me, and we would get poems that readers submitted. And so for a while it ran gangbusters, and then suddenly it just seemed like it fizzled and stuff stopped coming in. And then the people that were taking turns co-hosting that also had poetry got distracted and taken into other places. And so I was like, okay, it's done its thing. It's time. But now it feels like it's back again. So I'm probably going to be trying every this Thursday, at least for this particular Thursday, at least, I'm probably going to try to be sharing one poem. As long as I feel like it can either inspire or motivate or maybe help heal or do something to help somebody else, I'm going to continue to share until you go, okay, Dr. Kevin, I think it's enough. I think you've poeted us out. So I'm hoping you will keep me honest and not make this the, Dr. Kevin hot air show.
Well, you know me, I'm so shy, I rarely speak up, so.
I'm glad I have boots on. So Matt had to bow out last week for the last, through the spiritual lens of talking politics. And my friend MG McManus came in last week at the last minute. I don't know. I've been meaning to check on Matt because, I mean, like, he literally texted me 13 minutes before we were going to go on. Something came up and he couldn't be on the show, which is, Matt. That's not a Matt thing.
Yeah. Now you got me thinking. I haven't seen anything from him in a while. I think we're both.
And yeah, but I just had MG. So MG McManus was the creator of the Nativity Tribe cards. Did you like those, by the way?
I do. Those are very cool.
Yeah. If you get a chance to listen to last week's show, if you hadn't, either Laughing, Loving, and Alive or this one, I had her on both shows to tell the story of how she developed them and how they came about, and you would just love it. But this is a synchronicity thing. We've been friends for a long time, but we float in and out, and sometimes we lose touch. But it immediately flares up when we talk. Like we might not talk for 2 years, and we have a conversation, and it's like we were talking yesterday.
Right.
And so I had reached out to her about the Web of Light speaker series, and I'm not going to get a chance to finish telling this story. But anyways, 2 slots, one on each show, showed up unexpectedly, and I was able to get her in to talk about her cards just in time for people to be able to get them for Christmas. So, Miss Lori, next week we are Planetary